Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome. This is another SIG CLI meeting. Today is November 7th. My name is Maciej and I'll be your host today. Our agenda is basically packed with the amount of items, so let's get through announcements and test grid quickly, and we can focus on the main topics. So I think the most important announcement is that the code slush starts this Friday, which is November 9th. That basically means that every single PR that has a milestone 113 can safely merge. Anything that does not have that milestone set will have to wait until the next release. If I remember correctly, the person that was looking after the test grid was Sean. Sean, can you share with us the update on the test grid?
Yes, so the test grid is green now, and there was one incident that was Google specific on GKE that it took slightly longer than we'd hoped to resolve, but it is resolved. I did a very quick analysis of where our flakiness is coming from, and it looks like our port forwarding tests are where a significant amount of the flakiness is coming from. I'm going to take it as an item on myself or anyone who wants to help to dig into these port forwarding tests that are being captured in our test grid to find out what this flakiness is.
There has been some updates to the port forward command, if I remember correctly. Would you mind pinging the author of the latest changes to the port forward as well?
Sure.
Something tells me that it will be related to the recent changes, and if so, it would be good to get the author of the changes to investigate those as well.
Sure. Who's that, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It will be
I'll look
probably to figure out in the git log and see who, which PR was that, and just ping the person. Thanks very much.
Sure.
Okay, awesome. So quick reminder, if you want to be part of our on-call testing responsibility, sign up for the roles. Juan is taking over the role for the next 2 weeks. We still have spots available until the end of this year, so it's definitely something worth experiencing on your own. Okay, with that, we can then jump to the main topics. And the first one will be integrating Kustomize into kubectl. So, Jiang Fang, sorry, I'm probably saying your name wrongly, so I totally apologize for that one.
It's okay, quite close.
Take it away.
Hey everyone, I'm Jing Fang, working from Google on Kustomize. So today I'm going to do a quick demo for kube control with Kustomize integrated. And before that, I want to give some introduction of Kustomize and why we want to do this integration. So Kustomize is a SIG CLI sponsored sub-project. It has been developed for the past few months in its own repo. And it has several releases, and currently it is in a good shape. And when Kustomize was proposed as a sub-project, there was a cap. So Kustomize is expected to be integrated into kube control. So to achieve that, about 2 weeks ago, we did a premature attempt to add Kustomize as a subcommand in kube control. And many of you review that PR and give us your comments, which is highly related to the UX inconsistency and sort of things. And so then we realized it's not the best approach to do the integration in this way. And so we summarized all the comments and proposed a new way to do this integration. So this new integration is purely consistent with our current UX. It doesn't add any new subcommand. It doesn't add any new flags. And in addition, if for any directories or files that are not customization directories or files, everything will work the same as current. So I'm going to do a demo. And then after the demo, I'm going to explain how the integration works. So let me share my screen. Okay, share. Oh, sorry. Okay, can everybody see?
Yep, we see a green screen.
So here I'm in a directory. So this directory is a customization directory. You can see this customization.yaml. So this is the file, customize, recognize. And in this file, we have, let's take a look of the customization file. So here, we have 3 objects that are composed in one customization. And we have 1 patch applied. And this patch is to increase the replica size of the deployment. And then let's see. So KC is my alias for kube control. And now I want to do a very basic demo for the lifecycle management of the manifest. So first let's do apply and -f for my current directory. And then it will create those 3 objects, secret service deployment. And oops, I have them previously applied. Let me delete them first. So if we can run delete the same way, then those objects will be deleted. Then we run apply again, so we create those objects. So they are created, and then we can run get -f for the current directory. Then it will get the objects corresponding to the customization. So you see this here, the replica size is 5. And now let's say we want to update the replica size. So the replica size is defined in the patch file. Okay, it's 5. Now let's say we change it to 3. Then we can run a customize div on current directory. Then we will see the div. So you see these 2 lines, replicas is going to change from 5 to 3. Now let's say we apply that change. You see the deployment is configured, which means it is changed. Then we do another get for current directory. We see that the replica size is decreased to 3. So finally, if we are all good, then we can run delete, then all 3 objects will be deleted. So that's the demo, and I'm going to explain what has happened. So the integration into kube control is mainly in the CLI runtime, and there is a builder type. In the builder type, once you pass a -f flag, it's going to visit all the directories and the files pointed by that flag. So here I made some change that if the directory contains a customization.yaml file, then we say this is a customization directory, and then we are going to do a list of processing steps based on, so those processes are from customize. So as the output of the pre-processing, we got a list of expanded resources. And those resources will be consumed by whatever kube control subcommands like apply, get, or delete. So I have I documented all the details in the cap. So if you can take a look, it contains more details. So as I mentioned, this integration doesn't change the UX. It is backward compatible. And yeah, that's it. Mainly that's it. So any questions, comments?
So it looks pretty great. Thanks for the demo. I guess one question I have is just to confirm, is it a change in resource builders to know?
So I was hoping to just chime in for 2 seconds, just to say that we recognize that the process before was very clumsy and awkward, and so what happened was the feature branch was freezing, and so we tried to push something through. We were thinking that 113 was reasonable, and we realized pretty quickly that that wasn't the case. So yeah, just apologize for not getting this to this group before those before those emails came out. And we'd just like to point out that the proposed integration
Sean, I don't mean to interrupt you.
should be completely transparent, and it doesn't include the strange subcommand of customize. And if you don't have a customization file, it won't actually do anything. It won't be visible at all. So it feels, at least to me, pretty minimal and non-invasive.
Hey, Sean, can you hear me?
Are you muted, Phil?
No, I hear you fine, Phil.
Okay. Jingfang, can you hear me? It seems like there's an issue with the sound. Hey, Sean, can you hear me?
I muted myself.
I can hear.
And can you hear Phil talking?
Or any of us?
Yes.
Jingfang, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's like yeah, okay. It sounds like you guys got the mic issue fixed.
Okay, that's good. So my question was, it is so much better. It is like really awesome. From what I understood correctly, it is hooked into the builder. So basically every single command that will be using the resource builder will get the customize for free. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Awesome. I'm assuming that the customize yum file is hard-coded, the name of the customization file.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. What is the format of the customization file? It's basically a patch over any type of resource, or what to expect in
We can't hear you, Marty.
Do you have the...
I can hear him.
I don't have.
One sec. I'm just gonna. Maybe you guys should just come to my room. It sounds like you're having a lot of trouble in there. I'm in. Do you just want to come to multiplayer?
We didn't hear your last talking. No. Okay. Yeah, Marty, as you mentioned, the change is hooked in builder, and every command use that builder will be recognized customization directories.
Perfect. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can.
Awesome.
Jingfeng, can you just come to multiplayer?
Oh,
Like the room? There's been a lot of trouble with the audio. It seems like it's going in and out, and maybe you can just come. You can, if you just came here.
I think it's cool now.
It's fine.
We just had a speaker set wrong.
Okay, so
Okay, Maciej, your question was, what is the format of the customization YAML, right?
the format of the customization file and the name of the customization file. Is it hard-coded?
it is hard-coded now, but we can get that name from customization package, and then it will be not hard-coded in kubectl.
I'm more asking about, we just need to ensure that we document it properly so that people know what to expect.
Yes.
I don't care about this being customizable in any way. I just want to ensure that it is documented properly.
Yeah,
And
we will update the document.
Yeah, and most importantly, the format of the customized file. What is it?
Yeah, I have actually a follow-up at the end during my thing on documenting that stuff as well as other stuff.
Okay, that's good. That's probably all.
So the customization file format follows the Kubernetes style API styles. It has API version, canned, and all the other. We have the several different fields, and based on API version, so it follows the K8 style.
I think I agree with Maciej. We need to do more. Like right now, there's documentation in the customization repo. When this is part of kubectl, the documentation needs to exist with the kubectl documentation. Like if you're learning about apply, like this should probably be in that same area, right? Because it's part of that command now.
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how a regular user could learn about customize without getting into too much about details. Well, the docs is definitely one thing, one place, but then still within every single command. We need to figure out, and that would be the best option, is to have some kind of a help message, something that will exist so that a user will know that yes, this command supports the customize, or no, this command does not support customize. Because
any command.
Yeah,
Sorry,
well, yeah, that's true. Any command that is using resource builder, but that basically means you know that, I know that because we look at the sources. Users does not know that because they don't look at the sources. They don't know which commands use the resource builder. And some of our commands do not use it. And it will be mixed. So probably the best option would be to have a way of specifying this supports customize, and here's how to get some additional help about it. So we will have to go through all of the commands and ensure to make it explicit, because then we will get people asking us, well, I did the customize YAML file, but I'm invoking kubectl X, Y, Z, whatever, and it just doesn't work. And our answer to that question will be, well, it won't work because that command does not support customize. So we need to make it explicit for end users, which commands support it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And maybe while we're doing that, we could take a closer look at the commands that support the resource builder today, like, and being clear about what it is that supports it. Like if you look at kubectl rollout status, it supports the resource builder. But it's not obvious from the documentation, like how it does, because it also supports taking a version of a single resource, right? And so I think, Jingfeng, you have a list of all the commands that use the resource builder, and that's all the commands that then will support customize.
Yes, I have a
while
list
we're
of
going
that.
through the documentation on those, we could probably clean up the documentation about how it works, not just with customized, but also with the resource, like just files and recursive directories and how the commands interact with those.
Okay.
Also, Juan, you might remember, but if I remember correctly, we also planned on moving the resource builder to the CLI runtime and making it more generic. Which would
if I recall correctly, it should already be in the CLI runtime repo under generic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already.
Yeah.
But yes,
and
you're right. We did have plans to make it a bit more generic. I have to dig up.
Right, which basically means that if we move that, customize will move along this, which basically means every single person that is consuming CLI runtime for writing plugins and whatnot will be able to use customize the same way as the built-in commands.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Okay, that is so much better, and it's like really awesome. And actually, we were talking with Juan about it, that it would be so cool to integrate it into Apply, and the proposal that you bring to the table is just amazing. So thank you very much for reworking and responding to the feedback, and that is exactly what I was hoping to get for the customize.
So we were hoping to use this new KEP as a repository of the feedback and how we're addressing the feedback. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that's perfect. I think that's exactly what we're hoping for, to outline how this will land in kubectl. One of the technical issues question that I have is the entire functionality of the customize being implemented, and it will move inside of kubectl repo eventually, or it will still be a external dependency?
It will be external dependencies, but part of customize will going to be copied into a CLI runtime. If you can,
I mean, we don't like. I don't think we need to make that decision now, and it's probably whatever works best, right? Like, if we're seeing benefits of having it as an external dependency because it is encapsulated enough that the issues are easier to route and triage, and the testing is easier to just have focused on that repo and not block other stuff, like, then we can keep it as an external dependency, right? And just give access to that repo to all of the kubectl maintainers, right? If we decide that it's like having multiple places for like this really is part of Apply, or it's tightly coupled with Apply, and so anyone debugging Apply needs to be able to debug this, and so the issues belong in the same place, then we can just migrate the code over, right, to the kubectl repo. I think it's up to us, right? We can change our minds about that at any time.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome. Are there any other questions with regards to customize?
So just one other note. This is Sean. So we also we're considering this, or would like to get feedback and get people's ideas on whether or not developing a subcommand or extra kubectl functionality in its own repo is something we want to do in the future. As we said, we're pushing back on that decision right now, but it may be that future kubectl subcommands, if there are advantages, could be developed in its own repo and then vendored in. And it's something to think about for the future.
We might have a better idea on that after the integration effort.
Right.
Complete.
I think what we could do is we could treat plugins as a sandbox. So we start with sandboxing, which is, create a plugin and prove that your plugin is valuable to the community. It has wide usage, it's popular, etc. Then we will be considering swallowing it into the core kubectl. I think we probably we'll have to at some point in time formalize the process. But I think I've seen that happening in projects with regards to different libraries usually. I think it's something reasonable to have in kubectl as well.
It seems like a possible incubation process that we could formalize.
Exactly.
I like that idea.
Awesome. Thank you, Jingfeng and Sean. That's great. And thanks, Mache and Juan, for your feedback. It was invaluable.
Cool. Okay, on to the next topic. Phil, dynamic create commands.
You might have actually switched my two things just because of the previous conversation.
Okay.
I'd like to maybe quickly just talk about documentation. All right, let me share my screen here. Man, I'm not good at this sort of thing. Okay. Okay, are you able to see this?
Yep.
Okay. So I've been doing some experimenting with like how we present kube control and tooling in Kubernetes. And a couple of things occurred to me. Like one is that when you go to the Kubernetes docs, the tutorials and onboarding is focused on teaching about Kubernetes, and there's a lot of things this spans. Like some of it's about standing up a cluster and masters and nodes and these sorts of things. And a lot of it is about the APIs and deployments for stateful sets for services and how to do this sort of stuff. And the focus on the tooling of how to do this stuff is really just kind of sprinkled in there. And there's not a holistic approach of like, here is how to understand how to use Kubernetes. And so we see, or at least I've experienced a lot of folks asking questions just about like, how do I set up my project structure and how do I do CI/CD and how to like apply does this and how does it work and this sort of stuff, where like you actually need a comprehensive source of information about the tooling you're using and how it interacts with the APIs. And this became more clear to me, especially with the customization stuff, which is actually requires a lot of documentation because now we have APIs in the tooling themselves. And so I started putting together, I wrote a Git book for KubeBuilder, which is the SDK, and I sort of looked at that format and said, what would like a book on kube control look like? And the approach here is like, instead of having like, there's the tasks and concepts and stuff that the Kubernetes core documentation has, and this is kind of a re-envisioning of like a chapter by chapter, like concept by concept. Here's how tooling works in kube control. And I broke it up into a couple sections, this concept such as like the declarative aspects of kube control, how compositions and variation and reuse works. CI/CD is something people come to us, I hear a lot of questions about, and I think like providing direction would be really helpful, right? So some of this stuff I've fleshed out, right? And I started writing documentation, Mache, about like customize, right? And how that format looks. And so here's like a section on secrets and config maps. This exists in the customize repo, but this is more of the integration, how I envision it might work. And so like this talks about the different components, like one component of the customization YAML for generating config maps and how you generate them from different sources. Same thing with images. For instance, here I have one on how to set an image from a commit SHA or something like that. But other pieces, it's really just kind of a documentation of like all the questions I had that I don't think we have answers for, right? So like, how do you just structure your directory if you have multiple clusters you're rolling out to? Or if you have multiple environments, right? If you have a staging and prod environment, like I'm not sure that we have great documentation on like, here's where your staging versus production configs go. Some of this stuff is just on things that I think probably should exist that don't. Like, it'd be great if we had a linter that, you know, identified things that we knew were bad ideas and probably folks shouldn't be doing and told them about those, right? And so really this is a combination, right, of stuff where it's like providing documentation for stuff that maybe doesn't have documentation, providing a structure for, hey, we need to document this stuff even though we don't have to build anything for it, for providing a list of things that is like, actually, we didn't build this and it seems like it really should fit in the book. Or things that are buggy right now, right? Like, so deleting resources right now is one of the first things you'd probably want to know, right? If you're reading about apply. Like, this is how you create, update, and delete. But our delete story right now, if you look at it, says this is alpha, and there's very little guards, and if you do anything just a little bit wrong, you could blow away a bunch of stuff unintentionally. And so fleshing this out, and some of this stuff is like would be integrating into our existing commands like container logs, shells, and breaking it up. So this is an idea I've been exploring. Would love feedback on if this is, I guess, a couple things like is this a good strategy for potentially planning a roadmap, because it would allow us to like take a holistic view of the components we want to see and put together a roadmap from that context. Is this format of documentation something that we might want to consider, right? Because it is similar to a book, and we could link it from the core Kubernetes site and say, go read a book about kube control here. And are these kind of breakouts and composition of things, documentation just about kube control, something that we might want to invest in and pursue?
No, that looks awesome. I think I remember seeing the other book where you wrote for yes, for the Kube Builder. Thank you.
Yes. So this has been kind of a popular book for Kube Builder. This is what it's based off. This is a different book, same format. But one thing I do like about it is it's really easy to write these things. Like Jekyll is actually somewhat difficult, and you have to learn about different pieces of Jekyll. So this is pretty easy, but provides some nice things like code
First
layout.
of all, do you have a repo where we can leave the feedback?
I have a branch, and I could create a PR. Like, it depends. I don't have a great way now. What do you think the best way is? Like, I could create a PR and we could just leave comments on the PR without any intent of merging it.
Yeah, it would be a good starting point, because at least we have a place where we can direct people to with some instructions how to build it locally, so they can play with it, see how it works, and giving something that people can play with will definitely be something that will be easier for folks to also reply to.
Actually, I'm just going to create an issue right now.
Cool. Definitely sections about some basic steps. We definitely miss the introductory docs about, oh, here's my applications, how I'm going to set it up on Kubernetes. And, well, you need to write this. This is the set of commands that you need to invoke. This is what they will produce. And these are the further links that you might want to review, so that you know how your application is, how you should be managing your application, so that from basically any kind of user, either that will be a beginner user, intermediate, or advanced user, will be able to pick up any topic and learn something new. So that format is definitely something that is worth considering, especially if I remember correctly. Currently, our docs on kubectl and the official docs are mostly in terms of, well, if you want to do this, these are the kubectl create commands you want to create, etc. Or eventually, we are just injecting the help pages for every single command inside of the docs, which is like not much useful, because you can get it for free by just doing kubectl get -- help. So a higher level, a category like approach type of a thing is definitely something better than what we have these days.
Great. Awesome. I look forward to getting your feedback.
So something else I was thinking about.
Sorry, go on, Sean. Or go on, one.
So something else I was quickly thinking about is, so it's definitely fantastic. And I guess, are we planning on having this be a curated book where we get feedback in one place, like the kubectl repo via issues? Or could this be something where maybe there's like a central repository and people can make PRs to that and it's generated from that?
Can you say that last part again? I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch it.
So I was mainly thinking about the how contributions are made to this book. So would this be curated by a single person based on feedback from the community via issues? Or would we have, or could we have a repo, for example, where people can make PRs and then this is built from that repo in some way, or generated in some way?
I'd envision it as the latter. I suspect it's going to probably be much like our code base, probably 2 or maybe 3 people that really do 80% of the contributions to it, and then a long tail of folks who contribute one thing or another that they're interested in. I think I envision it as having a strong editorial, one leadership, right, to make sure that the structure and the way we categorize things and the way we lead users through the experience is really consistent. But the authorship of individual pages, I think, yeah, anyone could probably write them.
That makes sense.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm open to anything, honestly. That's just how I think it will likely evolve.
That's great.
Okay, cool. Should I move on to the dynamic commands then?
Yep. If there are no other questions, that's exactly what I was about to propose. So go ahead.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to close that. Now I switch branches. Let's see if I can bring everything up well here. All right, I'm almost there. Okay, are you able to see my IntelliJ
Yep.
screen? Perfect. Okay, so what I have here is the bottom's the terminal, so you can see that, and then eventually I'm going to bring up some code. Again, the demonstration is effectively, could we build commands that are purely declarative with nothing compiled in to the client except for some way of interpreting data, right? And the comparable art or prior art here I see is like, currently we have a command that knows about a bunch of APIs and knows how to send requests to specific APIs, right? And that is analogous or similar to like if your web browser had Google compiled in and all the forms for Google compiled in, right? And every web page compiled in, right? And in reality, there's this thing called HTML, which exposes this notion of forms and stuff. And so a web browser can just go to a page and learn about what it can send and what a user can fill in and then send responses back, right? And so could we apply similar, a very stupid version of that here, but at least have some of those same lessons, right? So I wrote this command, it's called cnctl now in cloud native control, could be anything. And what it does is it tries to do just that. And so if I do kubectl get custom resource definitions, I have in my cluster running this thing called CLI test resources. Oops. And so what I have attached to this thing is a couple annotations with commands in them, right? And so I've encoded into this as a proof of concept only, these annotations that have a list of commands that the CLI should then load. And those commands look like this, and then I have another one. I have two types of commands. The first is this, the premise is like, the command expresses a endpoint in the form of a resource, right? So that would be like this request here with a group version resource, in this case deployments. The HTTP operation, in this case create, a body template that it will send to that endpoint, and then response values it wants to save, right? So it names, it pulls out data using JSON path from the response and then saves it under some name, right? And the template can access flags, right? So the command itself exposes which Cobra flag or flags Cobra should register. So in this case, the name, and that has all the Cobra metadata like the type, the default value, the description, as an image flag, has a replicas flag with a default value of 1, namespace flag, default value of default, right? And then this, the request template can contain these flag values, right? So it will load the flag values in here. This is just a Go template. And then it also has all the other Cobra stuff you'd specify, such as command aliases, the short description, the long description, the example, and the path in the use, right? So if I run main, it will spit out this, that it found this create command, right? And so if I run man create -h, it will then spit out the help for that, which it loaded dynamically from here, right? So it says, well, let's see. So it actually supports subcommands. So in this case, it created cnctl create deployment because of the path. So if I go and print out the help there, it spits out the example, the aliases, the usage, the flags, right? And so I'll go run -- name, nginx, -- image, right? And it says it created. So if I do kubectl get deployments, you will see this thing exists, and it was created 6 seconds ago. And so this is like a very simple way to allow users to expose. I create commands, but it actually has enough power to do more interesting things than that as well. We could, the point of this is to provide a proof of concept of what's possible, not to say this is the UI we want or this is exactly what we want to expose, but show that that through data, we can actually do very, very powerful things. We can do sub-resources here. So this just shows a resource, but the logs command you can imagine would be implemented this way, or arbitrary other commands. And so some of the benefits of this include that one, version skew is less of an issue, right? Because these are being published from server side. You don't have to worry about testing. Do the old requests work with the new one, and does the new client work with old clusters and that sort of thing? The commands for clients, if for instance the server doesn't support a command, it just won't appear in the client, as opposed to appearing in the client and then either doing the wrong thing or erroring out. And it also allows extensions to be able to publish porcelain commands such as the create subcommands or the set subcommands or additional subcommands without having to publish a binary that then needs to be distributed through some mechanism and then needs to be version skewed and upgraded and all that sort of stuff. Another issue with publishing binaries is that they aren't necessarily then available in like containers that are published, or they're not necessarily available in certain companies that whitelist what binaries can be run, right? So the company may whitelist kube control as a binary, but won't whitelist every plugin and these sorts of things. The other thing I prototyped here is actually a command driven by a service. This is more ambitious. I'm not sure it's something we'd want to pursue, but again, it's to prove like what could we do, like what's possible. And so what this does is it uses the Kubernetes API services proxy endpoint to send traffic directly to services running in the cluster. And so this dynamic command, instead of sending to a resource endpoint, actually sends a request to a service that's running in the cluster. So it has the service name, the service namespace, the protocol to use, the operation to use, and then the request body, right? So it just sends a JSON request to a service instead. Instead of having the group version kind, it includes the URL and can populate the URL from flags again, and params as the params, and saves the response values. One thing I forgot to mention for both of these is that it also has an output template. So it has an input template for the request, but the saved response values can then be used in the output template. So you saw when I ran the demo, it said deployments at .apps and Nginx created, and that came from this output template down here, where it pulled the response name from the response. The code for this is actually relatively simple. This is probably the most complicated part of it is execution, but it's able to use the really leverage the dynamic client plus Go templating plus Cobra to do almost all the heavy lifting. So there's a request section here that just guards on what the request type is, and then uses the dynamic client to load the request body, realized request template into an unstructured object, and then send it to that thing. It pulls the group version kind directly from the request. And so it just generates the request pretty trivially. There's a list command to go find all the CRDs that have that particular annotation, and then use JSON to unmarshal their bodies into the requests, and then generate them. So yeah, I promised I'd deliver a demo before KubeCon. I think when Mache and I originally discussed this, it was a more restricted version of just like a couple of JSON paths and not full Go templating. I think that's possible to do. Still, if we want to restrict the functionality to just create commands or just set commands, for instance. But if we want to open it up to invoking arbitrary sub-resources, for instance, we have that option available as well. Questions?
Yeah, this looks great. Awesome. I'm actually, even though we talked back in May about just the create and set commands, and that was probably mostly because we consider that the server will be publishing the structure of the request being sent. The services sound interesting as well. What I'm currently interested in is we should probably sync with the API machinery SIG. And because if I understood correctly, your current implementation is based on CRDs, which basically means, well, you want to have the dynamic create, you need to create those CRDs, and then you're going forward. But the risk of that is that we will get out of sync the server published data when it is part of the CRDs and not part of the built-in stuff for the API machinery might get out of sync if something changes. So,
well, sorry, one note on that. I want to see if this addresses your question or not. I think your question is about like internal types, like deployments specifically, like what would we do there? Was that it? Yeah,
basically for the build, well, obviously for the user created CRDs, we will just have to expose that they expand the current CRD definition to be able to inject the create commands or anything like that. and that would be great. But I'm more asking about the built-in commands, whether you were considering going through API machinery and having this be part of the built-in API.
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways we could do that. Like the least invasive route for API machinery is include it in the Open API, which we fetch anyway, right? And Open API supports arbitrary plugins, or sorry, arbitrary extensions. So we could define our own extension type and then attach it there. And that means like is the lowest risk from the perspective of it requires 0 changes to Kubernetes and allows us to publish the data. If we wanted it to be more tightly integrated and be like a first-class notion, we could expose it as part of the discovery service, for instance, if we wanted to. Or we could ask for a new API endpoint, right? So there's the Open API endpoint, and we could have for instance, a endpoint that just published commands, a list of command data, right, as a binary. And then that way, you might get some, being able to load both in parallel, for instance, or maybe if you only need that and you don't need the Open API, there might be some reason to have it as a separate endpoint that's fetched separately. Yeah, a great idea. I think we should talk about if we as a SIG are want to pursue this idea, then we should talk to them.
Yeah, that we just, with the amount of resources that is basically growing every single day, and especially with the CRDs getting more and more popular, because, well, obviously the built-in types is one thing, but on top of that, it will be the CRDs, and people want to be able to do, well, kubectl create my fancy CRD, and for that thing, we will need to expand the CRD definition that we currently have with the templating language that you describe, or whether it will be exactly this or it will be slightly different, it doesn't matter. But this type of templating language would have to be part of the CRD definition, so that similarly to what we do currently for server-side printing for the CRDs, we would be then allowing people to define create operation or maybe even more operation within the CRD definition. So that definitely, yes, it's out of the question. We should pursue this topic. It will take some time to get there, for sure, as with every single API change. But yes, I'm all on board with the idea. It looks amazing. Thanks very much for putting this together.
Yeah, my pleasure. And one things we could explore as possibilities is, like you said, it's like API change for CRDs would take, we're talking 6 months minimum. And then you consider the rollout to all the new clusters, right? And that sort of thing. So like one possibility is a lot of CRDs are generated, for instance, from types.go files. So since they're generated anyway, we could continue to check for the annotation just for the purposes of supporting like old clusters with our client, right? And not having to wait 9 months to see this actually be viable, and then transition from that annotation to the first class as it becomes available. But why don't I put together a CAP that describes like the format of the command, as well as potential rollout strategies and support through CRDs and core resource types, and we can have a discussion there.
Yeah, I think the CAP will be the best way to start this, and then maybe during KubeCon we can get with the SIG API machinery and push this thing forward so that maybe in 1.14 we could get some alpha versions out there, and then build on top of that. So at least we have the API in place, and then we will be catching up with the kubectl.
Awesome. All right, that's all I got, and there's only 2 minutes left. There's anything else on the agenda?
I think stand-ups. Does anyone have any stand-ups? We did have additional topics, but they will have to wait for the next meeting. So if anyone wants to share any updates on the current work, now is your time.
I thought I'd just spend a second.
Next time.
Yeah, I was hoping actually to hear from Sean about the updates on the progress of extracting kubectl from the main repo, but I'm guessing there's still some work going on. So we will definitely be talking about it in 2 weeks. So thanks very much, everyone, and see you in 2 weeks. Bye.